You need to find a balance. I don't agree with the idea that you should only be 100% on discipline all the time, because life is also about enjoying it, not to the point where you overconsume and you become dependent on dopamine. But like, if you're neurodivergent, you already are. If you have ADHD, you're already dependent on dopamine naturally because your brain lacks it. And do you want to be even more dependent on it? No. My eyes look like I'm high. Discipline is important because obviously it is important, and I'm not going to explain that to you why it is important. But also, discipline gives you genuine self esteem. When you are disciplined, you get self esteem because discipline is hard. And when you accomplish discipline, then you feel better about yourself, because why wouldn't you? And someone who lacks self esteem, self confidence, may think that maybe I should focus 100% on discipline and have little to no fun at all. That's when my confidence will increase, but I don't believe that to be the case. Maybe I will get proven wrong in the future, although that is unlikely, I believe. But yeah, I believe that after a point, the self esteem you'd get from having discipline is not gonna be as much. And after a point, the better you'll be. Like, if you are, let's say, 90% better at something instead of 80%, it's gonna matter. But I don't know how to explain this to you. You will see it. Just try it and then tell me. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But I believe that the 10% of pleasure, well, I can actually kind of explain it. The 10% of pleasure is pure dopamine, and pure dopamine is going to give you more pleasure than completing or being better at a certain thing, because this will give you only so much confidence, and it will only like make you better so much. Because are you going to sacrifice that 10% of being just a little bit better than when you were yesterday, or whenever you were, to having this 10% of pleasure? Because you're going to be happier, I believe, if you consume that 10% of pleasure instead of giving that to discipline. Like, some people who think, oh, you shouldn't watch Netflix at all, oh, you shouldn't watch porn at all, you shouldn't masturbate at all, you shouldn't eat junk food at all. That's unrealistic. And it is unrealistic because I believe that two things can happen. What can happen is, if you completely disassociate from, like, if you stop those pleasurable activities, if you cut them, if you completely stop them, then you're going to be desensitized from them. You're going to not think about them, and you're going to forget how much pleasure they gave you. But I can understand where this comes from, because some people can slip off. Even if they watch porn once every 2 months, they will slip up. And yeah, like, they're not. You can argue that, oh, they're just not disciplined enough. I don't know if you can do that. Because after a point, I think natural human instincts and urges get into the way. I don't know if you can discipline yourself to not slip up after some months. After a point, maybe you can do it. But for a time being, at least, you probably can't do it. So even if you watch porn once a month, once every 2 months, then this one time is going to remind you of all that dopamine, and you're going to slip up. So, but I also believe that if you have a lot of time to do those things, if it's been a long time for you since doing those things, then I don't know, maybe this depends on your memory. I'm just making stuff up here. You will get reminders of was, how that pleasure made you feel. And because you struggled too much, now that you struggled too much, you want dopamine because you cannot take it anymore. You're like at the brink of a burnout or something. And if you, like me, struggle to find your boundaries within yourself, you don't know when you're going to have a burnout, you don't know your limits basically, then this is dangerous for you. Because if you deprive yourself from too much pleasure, then when you push yourself too hard, then you're gonna slip up again. But yeah, if you think about it more deeply, also, life is also about enjoyment. Like, if you're just living life for your ego, then you can argue that instant gratification or pleasurable activities are also the ego. Well, I don't know. But yeah, sometimes I think that I've been doing a lot of discipline, or just a lot in my uh, capabilities compared to my capabilities. And I'm like, wow, this is so hard. Like, I'm not enjoying my life. Like, life is torture. Why am I even doing this? To have this reward at the end. And then I get this reward at the end, and it's not as big as I thought. And I get depressed. And it's hard to discipline yourself and say to yourself, don't think of the reward to be so big. But when you're getting desperate and when you start hating your life, it's like you cannot control that. And also, this is a very important thing for me to say. Um, when you hate your life and you start self improvement and then you do too much discipline, you end up also hating your life. And you're like, why did I even do this? This is like, why? And you get that reward in the end, and it turns out it's not as good. But I have this mentality that when my life is going shit, when it's torturous or it's just going shit, I'm like, okay, I'm now going to start inflicting more discipline because I'm already used to my life being shit and torturous. And so if I have more discipline, it's also gonna be sad and torturous because it's hard to have discipline. But because I'm used to it, this has worked a few times, but other times it just made me feel worse because I'm like, oh, even more pain on top of pain. So yeah. Yeah. This helps me think.